I'm 93 years old, and I spent 427 days in a place I was never meant to stay. This is what really happens inside a nursing home, and how I escaped. But before I tell you how I got out, you need to understand how I got there. Because nobody wakes up one morning and chooses to leave their home. It happens slowly, in pieces you barely notice at first. And by the time you realize what's happening, the decision has already been made for you. I lived alone for 16 years after my husband Lloyd passed away. It wasn't easy, but I managed just fine. The house was too big for one person, for bedrooms and just me and my cat. But I had my system, and my system worked. I kept my little sewing business going until I was 84. Hemming pants, fixing dresses, keeping my hands busy and my mind alive. Every morning had a rhythm, coffee, quiet, sunlight through the kitchen window. I didn't feel alone. I felt in control. Then one day, everything changed in a moment I still remember clearly. I was reaching for a can of soup on the top shelf, cream of mushroom, the same one I'd bought 100 times before. And suddenly, my knee gave out beneath me. I fell hard onto the kitchen floor, the kind of fall that knocks the breath out of you. I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing how quiet the house really was. It took me almost an hour to reach the phone. An hour of pain, fear, and something worse, helplessness. My son David came and took me to the hospital. Bruised hip, nothing broken, they said. But something shifted that day, and it wasn't in my body. It was in the way my children started looking at me. You know that look, the one that says something without saying it. The look, that means a conversation is coming. After that, David and my daughter Linda started visiting more often. At first, it felt comforting. But then I noticed what they were really doing. They weren't just visiting, they were checking. They opened my fridge and checked expiration dates. They counted my pills and tested the smoke detectors. One afternoon, Linda moved my laundry detergent from the top shelf to the bottom. She didn't ask me. She just did it. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. She was rearranging my life like I was already gone. The conversation happened on a Sunday afternoon, both of them sitting at my kitchen table, like they had rehearsed it. David had a folder in his hands, a real folder with brochures and printed pages. They had already done their research. "Mom, we found a really nice place," he said. "It's safe, it's close, and you'd have everything you need." I said no before he could finish, but it didn't matter. Linda started crying, and David started explaining like the decision had already been made. That's the part nobody tells you. It isn't really a conversation. The brochures are already printed. The deposit is already discussed. They're not asking for your permission. They're preparing you to accept it. I moved in on a Tuesday in March. One suitcase, one box of photographs. I left behind 51 years of living in that house. My sewing machine, Lloyd's chair, my garden. I had counted 14 steps from my bed to the kitchen window. At Ridgeview, it was 6 steps to the door, and the door had a code. That's when I understood I wasn't just moving, I was being contained. Breakfast was at 7:15 every morning. I had never eaten breakfast before 9 in my entire life. For 70 years, I made my coffee when I wanted. Now someone placed food in front of me on their schedule. Medication at 8, lunch at 11:45, activities at 2, dinner at 5, lights off by 9. They called it encouraged, but it didn't feel like a choice. If your light stayed on too late, someone would knock. Everything okay in there? You stop being a person. In a place like that, you become a routine. Every morning, I walked down the hallway to the dining room, and there was a smell I couldn't ignore. Cleaner, strong and artificial, trying to cover something underneath, something human that never really went away. After a few weeks, I stopped noticing it. And that was the part that scared me the most. Because when you stop noticing, you start accepting. And when you accept, you start disappearing. I sat at the same table every day with the same women. We didn't choose each other. We were placed together. Most of the staff were kind, just overworked and exhausted. They were doing their best in a system that didn't slow down. There was one aide named Carla who stayed after her shift sometimes. She would sit with me and just talk. She asked about my life, about Lloyd, about my shop. For a moment, I felt like a person again. But Carla was just one person in a building full of strangers. And every day, the faces changed. Monday, someone new helped me shower. Tuesday, another stranger. Wednesday, someone else I had never seen before. You get used to people you don't know seeing you at your most vulnerable. And somehow, you're expected to feel grateful for it. That's the part that's hardest to explain. There was a woman named Marjorie at my table. She used to be a teacher, sharp and full of stories. When I met her, she could quote Shakespeare without thinking. 2 months later, she couldn't remember what day it was. I watched her fade slowly, like a light dimming. Not all at once, just a little less each day. Another woman named Helen told me something I will never forget. It was late and the room was quiet. She said, "The worst part isn't the food or the schedule." Then she looked at me and said, "It's that nobody needs me." I wrote that down and kept it in my drawer. I read it every morning because it was true in a way that hurt. Nothing depended on me being awake. I started counting things to stay grounded. Ceiling tiles, steps, minutes. 3 minutes for help on a good day. 11 minutes on a bad one. I almost stopped counting after a while. I almost stopped caring. Then on day 312, something changed. My granddaughter Key came to visit. She looked around the room and saw everything I had stopped noticing. And then she asked me one question. "Grandma, do you want to leave?" I didn't hesitate. I said, "I've wanted to leave since the second week." And she looked at me like that was all she needed to hear. She said, "Then we're getting you out." Just like that. It wasn't easy, not even close. It took her 3 months of fighting. Phone calls, paperwork, waiting lists, closed doors. Even my own children didn't believe it was possible. But she didn't stop. She kept searching until she found something nobody had mentioned. A county program that provided part-time help. 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was enough. Not perfect, but enough to live at home again. She also found Diane, a woman who needed purpose just as much as I did. Someone who showed up every morning. The day I came home, I stood in my kitchen and looked around. Dust everywhere, silence, memories.